I made the decision to stay as a leader when I was in my 3rd year of Bible college. I went for coffee with Becky, my mentor, and we were just talking, and I felt the pressure of staying in Canada, and I felt the pressure of staying in Asia. So I was conflicted with both decisions, and I'm like, well, I can stay in Canada or I can stay in Asia. I think I would prefer Canada more. And something that just set me at ease completely was, she's like, whatever decision you make, Alyssa, we are behind you in it, and we are happy with whatever decision you make. All of a sudden, the level of stress just went down so much, and I'm like, wow, I feel so amazing right now. I don't have to worry about it. And so it was during that time that I began to decide. And I just decided in that moment, I'm like, okay, I want to stay here full time. I want to sacrifice staying in Canada and stay in Asia to be a missionary. And that's never been on my radar ever. I never had the call of become a missionary. It was like, it was like year by year, my heart started to turn. And I just see now that as I'm staying here, I see the blessing in it. And I love what I do. I get to spend every day mentoring people in videography and in leadership. I am now the producer of Continuum Media, and I get to do what I love every day, and I get to change people's lives through media. And I'm so honored that I've decided to be a leader in Victory Asia.
Take it away, Beck.
So I feel like today is a very significant day. You've already mentioned a few things with our team here. It's our last week of Bible school here in Thailand, and it's kind of a transition season. But I feel like today's podcast or discussion or whatever is going to be really significant for the people that are listening anywhere around the world.
Yeah.
Because we've spent the last, 4 weeks or so talking about what it is that we do, and we make leaders. And it's good to sit on that end and hear, yeah, we make leaders and that's great. But then at some point, as an individual, we have to make a choice, step over the line of where we are to where we feel like God's calling us to be. And I believe that today is going to be that line in the sand for so many people that are listening where, God's been putting things on your heart. He's putting ideas on your heart, and you're thinking maybe what I'm living now isn't what God's actually called me to. It's not the fullest that he has for me. And I really believe that today could be that watermark day where you hear something or receive something today that gives you the boldness or the faith or the courage or whatever it is that you need to step over that line and say, I'm going to do this thing with my life. I have one life to live, and I'm going to live it fully for God's glory.
Yeah.
And so I feel like get ready, because if you are listening, you could be going on the ride of your life today.
That's right. I remember way back when I was first born again, and we were, I don't think we were married yet, but we were working hard, serving God in the ministry. And when you get born again and you get such a revelation of the goodness of Jesus and the purpose of your life. And so we had already, speaking of your mom and I and a lot of other young people around there that got saved and gave our lives to Christ, we had already begun to reach beyond our city. And it's like, we encourage people to reach your neighbor, but there's also our city, there's also our province, our state, whatever it may be. And true Christianity comes in, and there's that desire, that passion to reach beyond when Psalm 2, right? Give me the nations as my inheritance. That's the prayer that we're to pray on behalf of Jesus. And I was sitting in a big tent. We were having a family camp in a mosquito-infested swamp in northern Alberta, and it was hot and muggy, and afternoon service, and pastor was preaching, as he always did, and I'd heard him 1,000 times if I'd heard him once. And in every sense of the word, it was probably the most humdrum, commonplace point in life that you could imagine. This is the most normal, like whatever that was. I mean, the mosquitoes weren't normal, but that kind of a thing. And And he was talking about having been to Africa, and he had visited a missions base, which is an outreach to the Maasai people. The Maasai people, fascinating people in Africa that do all the dancing and stuff. And he said that this missions base didn't have anybody that wanted to go to it. There was no missionary. And I'm like, serious? There's a place to go where nobody's going? Like there's an opportunity out there that nobody grabbed at? But God dropped something into my heart, and that was probably one of the main pivotal decisions or choices that I ever made in my life, and that is I am going to be a missionary to the ends of the earth. Not just my community, my city, my country, but I'm willing to go to the ends of the earth. And I had just a little kind of a vision right then, and I could just see multitudes and multitudes, billions, millions, I don't know, it's hard to say, just masses, a sea of people that were unreached. And that's what we're talking about today. There are times, and it could be right now, it could be when you're least expecting it, that God's going to open up an opportunity for you to make a decision of a lifetime.
Yeah, that's good. So one of the things that, just in preparing for this show, you sent me some ideas you had, and one of the things that you wrote that I really love is that we have to choose our life ahead of time, right? If we don't make a choice as to what it is we want to see happen in our lives, it's just going to be this random hodgepodge, and we're going to be like, how did I end up here? It's because you didn't choose your life ahead of time, right? You didn't choose what it was you were going to do. So can you talk to that a little bit? Because sometimes it seems to people like what the obvious choice is, right? I get a job, I get married, I get a house, I work hard, I raise a family that loves Jesus. But, those are the big decisions that we make, but there's actually another big decision that we're supposed to choose, which is the purpose and the call that God has for my life. How am I going to fulfill what God's called me to do?
Right. And the key is, and again, beyond the obvious things, choices in life, career paths, and who you're going to marry, and all that kind of stuff. But if we just step back and look from a bigger, broader perspective, the key to every puzzle, the answer that's needed in every situation is a person, right? It's not just like I need a new idea, no, we need a person. It always comes down to a person. When we're thinking about this ministry and the next step and the next level, what's the key? It's a person. Somebody is the key. To every level, to everything that you move ahead in, a person is the key. Moving into Vietnam, what's the key? People, right? A family that's willing to go. And also, at the same token, the key to the success of what you're doing and what I'm doing is that somebody else will come along and see this as an opportunity for their future. Okay, so the key to our next level is a person. The key to your next level is a person, right? The key, whatever God's going to do, it comes down to a person. That's why these decisions are so important. They're so essential. And it's like Becky said, if you don't ever make the decision, I could have just built a little cabin by that swamp and still been living there, swatting mosquitoes, But the fact is that something happens in your heart, and you see that, no, here's an opportunity. It may not be very clear. It might not be like all laid out like I would like. It might not be comfortable. Maybe, some scared stuff and risky stuff. But here's an opportunity, and it's not only the answer to somebody else, but it's also my answer because it's an opportunity for me to step into something that I've never stepped into.
I think that's significant what you just said, because a lot of times we feel like if God would just make it more clear, then I could be confident that this was the thing that I was supposed to do, right? Or we feel like if it really was God, it should be a little bit more laid out for us, right?
Yeah.
And you think of all of the great heroes in the Bible when God called them, you think about Moses, right? And God's like, I'm going to call you to let my people go. And it's like, yeah, that's it. And it's clear in our mind because we saw how that went. But Moses was standing in front of a burning bush. And then what was he supposed to do? Walk to Egypt by himself and just knock on Pharaoh's front door and be like, let my people go, God gave him a calling, and the calling was clear. But the how he walked it out wasn't exactly laid out for him. So if we're waiting for that step A, step B, step C to be totally clear, you're probably going to be waiting a long time.
Yeah, that's right.
So what you're saying is you're moving on an idea that God puts in your heart, or just kind of like a thought, or a, I could do this, and you start pushing towards that, and then God opens up the next thing for you.
That's absolutely right. If he didn't need someone creative, a problem solver, a solution finder, he wouldn't need you. Right? If everything was all laid out, he wouldn't need us, right? Like everything would already be perfect. And a lot of people think that too. And so when it comes down to finding that pivotal point, and again, we're talking about making a decision. And so just for today's purpose, let's call it a once a decade decision. Okay, a key decision. Maybe it's a once a lifetime, but I'm not talking about every day, what am I going to have for breakfast? But huge decisions that change the course of your life, or that set you on a path that maybe you didn't really expect, or didn't see clearly. And it's so true, Becky, that these decisions, I mean, you could make a decision like that, like, okay, I'm willing to be a missionary to the ends of the earth. I mean, what on earth does that mean? Right? Well, in the end, we can look at it now and say, oh, yeah, this is what it meant. Right? Clear to see now. But at that point, there was no clarity. We had no idea where to go. I thought maybe, like, well, okay, let's go to Africa. Like, I would be just as willing to go to Africa as anywhere, like you just want to fulfill that. But you have to sense some indicators. You have to pay attention to the indicators in your life, all right? And ask yourself a few questions. Am I fulfilled at this point, or do I feel like I've stagnated? Am I bored with the way things are, or am I living on the edge of my seat? Am I excited? Am I full of passion? Are things around me, are there things happening around me, or does it seem like, man, I wonder if I'm just wasting my time? See, and those are indications that it's time for one of those breakthrough decisions to take you to the next level. We're talking about shift decisions, right? Change decisions, something major in your life that's going to move you from where you are into something more exciting again. And I remember a few years ago when Pastor Kelly was here, and all kinds of exciting things going on, and there's people from all over Asia coming and going and stuff. And I asked Pastor Kelly, said, like I often do with leaders when I get to talk to them, is say, so what do you see, and what do you think? What do you see here? What do you can you give me an indication from, he said, I just think you guys are really bored. And I'm like, seriously? We're probably the least bored people I ever know. But you stop and think about it, yeah. Because what was exciting last year is boring this year, right? We want to go faster and farther. We don't want the same thing as we had last year, right? And so yeah, that's it. So pay attention to that in your life. Don't be satisfied with that. It's time for a decision if things are not full of passion and full of fire. Yeah.
Okay, so then if you're somebody who's sitting there and going, okay, this is me, I'm ready to kind of make that move. I feel like I'm stagnant where I am and God's moving me on to something else. And maybe you have an idea, like maybe it is missions or maybe it is something else that God's calling you to do. How can you tell if God's actually in it, or if it's just you saying like, I'm bored, I'm hearing something exciting, so maybe I'm going to be a missionary.
Yeah, that kind of comes back to what you were saying a little while ago, Becky, about, it's not clear, it's not right, like, it's just not all laid out. You have to go by what God puts in your heart, not by what you see around you. It's never going to look like the right time. It's never going to look like everything is falling in line. And I get a kick out of people that say that. Oh, yeah, I can tell God's in this because everything fell into line perfectly. I'm like, what? What planet are you from? Either that or a different God than me, because it's never been like that for me. God has always put me up against challenges that need to be solved, right? And especially the pioneering thing, and so you got to look and not say, well, the circumstances are right. That's the last indication. But it's coming on the inside, and it's coming through people around you. It's coming through your close relationships. It's coming through your leaders. It's coming through what you see. It's coming through, and the main thing is your sense of equity or justice, and that's what I hear God through that more than I hear God through anything else. I think when it comes to big matters, and that is when I'm looking at something or hearing some news or seeing something, and something rises up on the inside of me, and I want to pound the table and say, that is not right. somebody needs to do something, and God says, okay, I'll go. You know, like, here's your cue, right? And so that's what it is and if we're not passionate people, we're not going to hear that. We're not going to connect with that. We've got to be passionate and say, you know, I'm not going to be bored. I'm not going to spend this life bored, but I'm going to let my eyes see things that need to be changed and things that challenge me, so that I'm going to say, yes, okay, I'm going to do something about this. Don't know exactly what to do. And we know things are not all going to fall into line. It's going to be a challenge, right? But that's why he needs us.
Because you have people that, I've known people like this too, right? You hang out, you go to a conference, and they're at the end of the conference, I'm going to be a worship leader. And the next week they are listening to something else on Christian TV, and they're like, I'm going to be a pastor, and then I'm going to be a missionary in Africa, and then I'm going to, you know. So there are a lot of people, there are some people that they're always saying the things that they want to
Right.
do and they want to be. So it's not about just having an idea and being excited about an idea.
That's
A
right.
lot of times if it's something that God's calling you to, yeah, there's excitement, but there's also a lot of fear and trepidation and a sense of, you know, like, is this the right thing? And so in order to go through that, some of the things that you talked about is that you have to be connected to the Word of God. There has to be, you have to have a living relationship with the presence of God and the Word of God, because if you are somebody who only connects with God, I mean, and He'll speak to you regardless,
Sure.
but you really have to develop a life in the Word, right?
Yep.
Because the decisions that you and Mom made, the direction that you took, the Word was what actually helped guide your emotions, your understanding. It gave you wisdom into seeing, yeah, this is a thing that God would do, and this isn't what God would do. And so if you feel like God is calling you into a direction, you need to really make sure that you're just filling yourself up with the Word
Yep.
of God, right?
That's right, because not only does it give you direction, but it empowers you.
Right.
Because everything you come up against is going to be a challenge, and you're going to have the faith to go through it.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to come from understanding God's heart through His Word.
Yeah.
And so we really do need to, you're right.
So one
press
of the
into
things that happens is when you feel like God is moving on you to change course in your life or to do something different, that's when you also will feel that pressure, whatever it is, to just get in the Word,
Right.
get into
It's
prayer,
so
get
true.
into, right?
Yeah.
You'll know that God's speaking to you, because what ends up happening as a result of that is it does take you into times of prayer. It takes you to your knees because you're feeling like, God, I know you're speaking to me, and I need to make sure that this is clear. I need to make sure that this is you. And so it does push you into a position of intercession and prayer. And so if you feel like God is transitioning you, don't be surprised if what comes out of your life is just a time of, you know, praying, reading your Bible, pressing into God in a new way.
Yeah.
He just kind of puts that burden on your life
That's
because
right,
it's
yeah.
shifting you and preparing you for what He's going to take.
Well, that's
take
right. And
to.
you see Moses went through that. The Apostle Paul went through
Yeah.
that. Every one of us goes through that. And I can remember, you know, our winter season. And it was absolutely wonderful. We had this desire. And then by that time, me and Mom were married. Margaret was born. You were born. We were living in our little house in the other mosquito-fested end of Alberta. And I can remember just you know, in the evening with the kerosene lamp, we didn't have electricity or anything like that, and I would light the coil oil lamp and open my Bible, you know, after supper, and 6 o'clock the next morning, I'm still sitting there, just absolutely enthralled by the goodness of God, and that revelation that He was giving downpour, and it happened for a number of months, all through the 40 below winter for sure. I didn't work. There was no work, and I was just all the time in the Word, and it built something on the inside of me that was greater than every outside voice. And you're going to have that if you're going to go where God wants you to go. You've got to have a revelation and a determination and a convinced spirit, right? Faith on the inside of you that's greater than every outside voice, because that's what you're going to need to carry you through.
Yeah, amen. That's good. Okay, so then now you're in the position. Let's say you're listening and God's been speaking to you and you have been spending time in prayer and you feel like you have an idea of what it is that God's releasing you to. The next step is sometimes the scariest step is where you begin to voice that.
Right.
And tell somebody, I feel like God's calling me to be a missionary in Africa, or I feel like God's calling me to quit my job and serve the church full time, or whatever it is, right? So how do you take that step of approaching your leaders or those that you work closely with, maybe even your family or whatever, that a lot of times they are not ready for the change that God wants to bring into your life, you know? And it's not because they're against what God wants to do, but it's so foreign to them, and it's something that God's doing in you and not in them, and it's hard for people to understand.
You haven't gone through anything until you've hit this part. It is such a huge challenge. And I know that every one of you here sitting at Victory Asia Bible College have met that challenge. Some of you in different cases than others. But how many of you have had somebody say, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you go to Thailand to Bible school? Like, that makes no sense at all, right? You know, like that's the thing. And people, I mean, my family, still to this day, I mean, many of them have passed away and they still never figured it out. You know, like, I have no idea why those kids went over there. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And, but let's talk about the realities for a moment, because this is really, really key. If you're going to get where you need to go from where you are right now, you're going to have to relate to the people around you. You know, whether it's your spouse, your kids, you know, your pastor, your leaders. And here, just this gets to be really practical, really, really practical. And that is, if God's speaking to you and says something to you like that, like he did to me, for example, you know, okay, God, I'm willing to be a missionary to the ends of the earth. Don't start blabbing about it, because you're going to abort it before it's ready to come to birth. The first people you need to go to are the people that are closest to you in spiritual direction, not closest to you in eating potato chips and watching videos. The people that are closest to you in your spiritual direction. And so, you know, so in that case, I talked to my pastor and I said, man, Pastor Norm, this just seems like, wow, God just really touched my heart through what you said. That's so much better than me telling everybody else I'm going to go as a missionary, and one day, hey, guess what, Pastor? I'm out of here, right? He's like, whoa, whap, you know, like, and there'll be resistance. But, you know, wise as a serpent, God spoke to me through your sermon, right? And now he's on board. And it makes all the difference. And so you need to think in those terms. Don't blab, but press through, incubate, right, the thing. Let the Spirit of God hover over it and bring it to some form and to where you can begin to communicate it. And everything's like that. It begins as an idea and a thought that you're not even able to put words to. And you've got to meditate on that thing, like we say, get into the Word and pray in tongues until you begin to get that thing to a point where you can communicate it. Okay, this is what going to Vietnam looks like, right? Or this is what starting this ministry looks like. And then you can begin to communicate it and be communicated in the right places first. It's very, very key. Otherwise, what you're going to do is you're going to build resistance against what God's called you to do. Yeah.
So then what do you do if your leader says no?
Well, I don't know. You have to weigh that very carefully, because God forbid that you go out and do anything in rebellion, because that'll shoot you in the foot. That'll come back on you. It'll bite you. But the other side of it is, how do you get people that don't see it to see it, when they need to see it before this is going to happen? And again, it comes down to some very practical things. And here's really, really the key, is building the relationship. And don't build the relationship around, this is what God called me to do, and you don't understand, whatever. Build the relationship around building a relationship, right? Build a relationship with your leaders that's a mutual relationship, because we're one in the family, one in the Spirit, one, you know, and one in the vision, the worldwide vision, the Great Commission. I'm convinced that nobody will resist a well-communicated, straight from God, in alignment vision. They won't resist that. They might question it. You might have to discuss it. You might have to, you know, work out a few things, but they don't really resist. It's the same thing, for those of you who are married, it's the same thing with your husband and wife. I mean, I get some harebrained ideas and my wife is like, no way. And it takes a while, you know, and I'm not convincing her. It's not a point of convincing her. It's a point of let's look at this thing, let's give it some birthing time, let's give it some, right? And see what comes out. Because this is not a point of my pride. It's not, I'm going to do what I think is right, but I'm going to do what we think is right in the sight of God. And that's really how we minister to each other. So think of it in terms like this. When you're meeting resistance, think of how you can minister to that resistance through building more relationship and more understanding. Because if you got something from God, the fact is people that love you and care for you are going to get behind it.
So that makes that responsibility, it puts that responsibility back on us,
Yeah,
right?
it does, yeah.
If I'm not getting the response that I want from my leaders or from those that need to be in agreement with me, then the response, instead of just saying, oh, they don't get it, they don't understand, I'm going to be offended at it or whatever, it puts it back on you to pray for them, press through with that, communicate it, and don't give up. I remember hearing a story from missionary friends who their pastors weren't very excited about releasing them when they wanted to become missionaries. And they had to faithfully serve in their church with this desire for years and years.
Right.
But their faithfulness paid off, right?
Right.
They kept serving their leaders. They kept communicating the vision. And at the same time, they kept helping in missions wherever they could, giving towards it, praying for it, and all that kind of stuff. And eventually the release came, and that relationship to this day is still healthy because
Yes.
they did it the right way. You know, they didn't circumvent the people that God had put in their life for protection. And I firmly believe that what they had to walk through in that shaped them to be better leaders, to be better
Absolutely.
communicators.
Yep.
And it helps them now as they lead their own team with,
exactly.
you know, dealing with people
It's
and things
so
like that.
true.
So don't try to short circuit the process just because it's hard or because somebody doesn't see. And you might feel like this is, you know, it's a waste of your time or whatever. It's not, because it's actually teaching you the skills that you need, and it's teaching you how to preserve that relationship and work in relationship when you feel like it would be easier to just get out of it.
That's
It's
right,
never
yeah.
easier to just get out of it. You have to work through it if you're going to actually go somewhere with it.
Yeah, that's so true.
Okay, so then today we're talking about the shift that you could possibly take in moving up another level in your relationship with God and your walk with God. And for us today in the ministry, there's actually a specific person that we're looking for today. So do you want to just share with people? Because maybe you are the one who's listening, and you might be the one that God is actually calling to be that person for this place.
Okay, this is all about us having an opportunity to speak to you, someone who's listening, because there are open doors, and our key, the key to the next level of the ministry in Asia is a person, right? We're talking about is a person, and it's some person who's paying attention right now and saying, wow, I wonder where I fit in, wonder where my next shift, I wonder where the next level is for me. And what we're looking for right now in the ministry, I mean, we're recruiting all the time. It's just, we just recruit. 7 weeks in Asia, come on, get involved, young people. VABC, Victory Asia Bible College, you need to enroll and be here all across the world. You need to be here because it's just amazing things, short-term missions and all those kind of things. Today we're looking for a specific person to help us take care of our partner base mostly in Canada. We're looking for a specific person who would like to have a sort of a pastoral ministry where they could look after the people, and we absolutely believe in partnership, not in sponsorship, not in supporters, none of that kind of stuff. We believe in partnership, and what we've done in Asia, we've done because of a whole lot of people that have partnered together. Well, right now, our whole lot of people that are partnered together are quite disjointed in the sense that we just are not able to take care of their needs. We're not able to keep in touch with them. We're not able to minister to them in the way that would be fitting and proper, because our partners around the world are equal recipients, or what do you call it, receivers of the fruit that's birthed and born in the ministry across Asia. Okay, we're equal partners and equal beneficiaries of that spiritual blessing. That's what Paul said. That's the way Paul talked about it. And so we're really looking for a person who would be willing to join the team and become kind of the partner, care, pastor, looking for, right? And when we're not looking for that person in this room, right? Because I know that there's so many of you in here that feel like, yeah, I'd love to do that, I'd love to do that. No, we're looking we're looking for someone else's opportunity. There's someone out there who's listening, you know, on this via video or whatever, and saying, you know what, I need something to change in my life. And maybe that could happen.
So this would be somebody who would be based in Canada.
Right, that's right.
But would be making trips to Asia maybe 3 or 4 times a year in order to be a part of the ministry and see what happens over here. And so this is a long-term position.
Yeah.
And we're looking, it's basically you're joining our team as
That's
a missionary, but based out of Canada is what it's going to be. And so if you've been listening and you think maybe this is me, I'm not sure, the first thing that you should do is connect with us.
Yeah, that's
because we'll be able to
yeah.
give you more information about this, and there's going to be a process because we want to make sure that we have the right person who is called by God but is also going to fit in our ministry team, and we're going to be able to work with them. So basically, as our ministry in Asia has grown and developed a lot, in Canada we're not growing to the same extent that we need to, and we're called from Canada to Asia.
Right.
There's a great commission destiny that's attached, and it's not, Thailand versus Canada, whatever. We don't want to separate. We don't want to have what's growing in Asia outgrow what God is doing in our nation, in Canada, our home nation. And so we need to make sure that, there's people in Canada that need to be connected to the Great Commission destiny through what we're doing here. And so that's part of what we want to do. We want to make sure that Canadian churches, people in Canada, have an opportunity to connect with their Great Commission destiny from their home base in Canada and serve what God is doing here in Asia. So if that potentially could be you, maybe you don't know, it's just the first step is to contact us, and then we'll connect from there.
That's right. Email addresses are on the screen there.
That's
and
good.
So do that, and then we'll talk about how that could happen. But here's the thing, that there's an empty chair, right? And with that empty chair comes a whole plethora of not only responsibilities but opportunities to minister to people. And so many times we have it in our heart that we want to minister to people. Every one of us does. We have that. There's something on the inside of us that God put in there that's for somebody else. It's for us to minister to other people. To connect that to where that's actually happening, that's the big challenge, and that's what we're talking about today. And it takes a decision to pull the trigger on something you've never pulled the trigger on before. And say, you know what, I'm going to just take a step forward and see where this goes. And again, it's like Becky says, the reason that we want to do that is because we are so convinced and convicted that the nation of Canada has a destiny to the world. And honestly, the way it is, the way I see it in my heart, is that as a nation, any nation that's in here, okay, Burma, whatever, Thailand, whatever nation you're from, when you as God's people in that nation represent that nation and decide, you know what, yeah, it's not worth it. Our nation really doesn't have that. Our nation's going to the dogs. Our nation's poor. Our nation's got all this political unrest. Our nation's got poor government. Our economy's bad. And you get all that going, man, I tell you what, the way to counteract that, this is a spiritual battle that we're in, nation. Right? In Canada, this is a spiritual battle that we're in. The enemy that we're fighting is not politics. It's a spirit that wants to degrade and diminish the call of God on our nation. And so the way to counteract that is to operate in the opposite spirit. Because honestly, if it was just about us providing for the ministry, we would just say, forget it. Already, way over 80% of our resources that we run the ministry across Asia with come from within Asia, right? So it's not like this is a big thing for us financially or anything like that. Canada does not carry much of a load. But we have to have the heart. We've got to have the partnership, not only for us, but for the good of our nation. And we will not abandon our nation. We're sent from that nation, and we will not abandon our nation. And I know you guys that are from whatever your nation is from, you're proud of your nation. You're happy that God has put a call on your nation. We've got people from the Philippines all across Asia ministering in different nations. It's because of the call of God, and that you guys are willing to rise up and say, we're not going to just sit here and say, oh, we're a poor nation, we can't do anything. I mean, we're a corrupt nation, what can the Philippines? Yeah, you guys planting churches everywhere. Come on, seriously, guys. And we can take our nation to her national destiny, her spiritual destiny in God, by rising up and saying, you know what, this is not good enough. We are called to sow, we are called to take a gift to the nations, and we're going to do it.
Amen. So we choose our life ahead of time, and maybe today is your opportunity to make that choice wherever you are, and just be bold to press into what God is saying, and we just really stand and believe with you that God is going to use you in a powerful way.
Amen.
So thanks for joining us this morning.
Yeah, right to that email address.
Yes, amen.
Hey, thanks for watching World Mission Continuum. I'm Lana, one of the leaders here in Thailand, and if you liked what you just watched and want to know more, then check us out at victoryasia.com. We want to give you an opportunity to partner with us, so you can hit that Give Now button to be a part of what we're doing here in Asia, which is making leaders. Thanks for watching.